Welcome back, Muses. I want to start off with an apology. I was late, very late, getting last episode out, and I took a little break because chaos. The end. It has been a ridiculously chaotic last couple of weeks. Editing was a mess. Technical issues from the last episode was a mess. And yeah. And then everything in my house decided not to appliance anymore. That's fun. That was a good time.
Is your stove appliancing still?
It just took 2 days off too. They're building some kind of something down the road.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a gas guy out here that day. And I'm wondering if he had turned it down or off or whatever while they're doing building things over here. But that I wouldn't think would have lasted for 2 days. One burner worked though, so it still doesn't make any sense. I don't know what was wrong with it. We're just hoping it holds out. And then spent this whole tax season on a washer and dryer.
I am so sorry. That sucks so much.
And an air conditioning motor fan thing.
Jeez.
Yeah.
But you have air conditioning.
I do have air conditioning.
It's important down there.
It's very important. All right. So anyway, we are hopefully back on track and things have settled down. So far, so good on this recording. So that's my last couple of weeks. So how was yours? Well, how was your break and your second lunch?
Second lunch. My 11sies.
Yeah.
I bought a car.
You did buy a car. Do you love your car?
I do. I'm still trying to get used to a car that it talks to me and reads my text messages.
Well, that's awesome.
I'm very excited about whatever you're about to tell me because you've told me like 3 different things you were going to do.
Oh, yeah. Also, during this week of absolute chaos, my brain was in the same space. So I, at one point, was like, you know what? Everything's just screwed right now and the world is crazy and all of this stuff is happening and I'm just not really in a headspace to do witch trials because I like to give it my full, and I was like, so I'm just not going to do that. I'm going to find something else to do for this one and we'll pick it back up next week because I want to break them up anyway. Yeah. And then I spent like a whole 2 days trying to think of something and I was like, oh, I know what I'm going to do. So I wrote out the whole thing. I'm not going to tell you about it because it's going to be the next one because I wrote out the whole thing. And and then I got up, yesterday morning? I think it was yesterday morning or day before yesterday. Yeah. And was like, I'm going to go ahead and do it. So I had to put it all back together because I had written several for this and then I just had to piece them all together in a fashion that made sense. So that's what happened there.
I do that to you all the time. So I understand what it's like. But I am a chaos goblin. You're the organized one amongst us.
Well, I was not this past week, that's for sure. All right. So this segment of the witch trials is short, but has a lot of little info that kind of sets things up for the momentum for everything for the other ones. So it's not quite as crazy as it's gonna be by any means, but it's getting a little kind of crazier. So let's get started. And these two are going to be Fribourg and Neuchâtel. In the 1400s, the world felt fragile. The Black Death was a recent memory, and the Reformation was beginning to stir. To the common villager, a sudden frost that killed the vines or cows that stopped giving milk wasn't just bad luck, it was maleficium. In Fribourg, the transition from secular crimes to spiritual ones happened early. The authorities began to believe that witches weren't just lone herbalists, but members of a secret diabolical sect sworn to the devil. This shifted the trials from "you hurt my cow" to "you are an enemy of God." That's literally the jump that was made. So the legal machinery of how things kind of switched over into this, the trials weren't chaotic mobs, but were chillingly bureaucratic. In Neuchâtel, which was under the influence of the Prussian crown and later deeply Protestant, the focus was on confession, which is kind of how we did things more than not here. So, using the Carolina or the criminal code of the time, sleep deprivation. Once a victim confessed to flying to a sabbat, they were pressured to name accomplices. This is how a single arrest could snowball into the purge of an entire village with just one confession. So, the execution and legacy. The end was almost always the same: a procession to the outskirts of the city, a final reading of the sentence, and the stake. In Fribourg, the executions often took place at the Guet, or the lookout, overlooking the beautiful medieval architecture. By the time the trials faded in the late 17th century, hundreds had perished, mostly women, but also men and even some children. So I do have kind of a rough estimate of the numbers for Fribourg. Fribourg's trials spanned over 300 years, making it one of the longest running jurisdictions for witch hunting in Europe. So the total accused was approximately 500 people were formally put on trial between 1429 and 1431. Total executed was around 300 to 330 people. The execution rate was roughly about 60% to 66%. This is a high mortality rate for a legal system in Fribourg. If you were formally charged, the odds were heavily against your survival. And then there was the gender split, of course. Roughly 70% to 80% were women. Unlike other regions, Fribourg had a notable number of men, around 20 to 30% accused, often in waves, where one person was forced to name their accomplices at a supposed sabbat. So the numbers for Neuchâtel had a shorter but very intense great hunt period, particularly during the late 16th and early 17th centuries. So their total accused records are slightly more fragmented than Fribourg's, but estimates suggest hundreds were brought before the courts. We do not have those numbers for them. The total executed, approximately 226 people were documented as being put to death. But while the total number is lower than Fribourg's, the population of Neuchâtel was significantly smaller at the time, meaning the social impact of these executions was arguably just as devastating to the local villages. So I do have some of those people from the records. Not very many, but some. And not a big whole bunch on their stories. But I'm going to give you what I got. And just like last time, please remember that I speak somewhat kind of normal English, and neither Swiss, France, none of these I don't speak that.
She's very fluent in Appalachian American.
I am that.
We do what we can.
Yeah, I try real hard. I have to say I'm slow. Okay, so here are just a few of those people and a very, very short little bit about them. So first we have Isabel de Vallangen. She was from Neuchâtel from the 1450s, and a lot of that we don't have exact dates, so they are estimated. Her case helped establish the idea of the witches' sabbat in the region. So she was one of the first ones who was accused of going to fly off to her little meeting with Satan on whatever they were riding about then. I'm assuming they were already using brooms. I'm not sure. So second, we have Margot Dulachot from Neuchâtel, 1539. She was accused of attending a sabbat. Her trial is famous for the detailed and coerced descriptions of the devil's appearance. Next up, we have Claude Anne de Guise from Neuchâtel. In 1583, she was a noblewoman, showing that wealth didn't always protect you. She was accused of using powders to kill livestock.
What kind of powders?
I don't know. When I was looking into these, I read it and I looked on another source because I thought it meant powers.
Yeah.
It's not. It's powders. So I don't know what kind of powders she was killing livestock with. And then we have Leamanah from Fribourg. In 1622, a rare male was accused. He was charged with renouncing his baptism and performing rituals to cause hailstorms. Now, if you'll notice, it's kind of a little less frequent here for men, because remember, for Valets, it was just about half and half. So we're getting out of that now. Next up, we have Benoît de Henny. Benoît from Fribourg in 1654, accused by her neighbors after a series of unexplained illnesses in the village. She was executed following a pricking test or looking for insensitive marks. So there's that. Catherine Rayponde, or Carillon from Fribourg, from 1731. She was one of the last, quote, witches executed in Switzerland. A marginalized woman accused of shape-shifting into a fox and spoiling the milk.
That's what you would do if you were a witch.
I would, 100%.
If you could transfigure.
I just need some kind of ointment.
Oh, allegedly, yeah.
Right.
And will you use a broom or a chair?
I'm a chair kind of girly, I think.
I think I'm going to granny clamp at that shit.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, I live in my rocking chair out there on the sun porch, and that's where I would want to be. Because rocking chair. I would want to see if I could get going real good while I'm flying, or if I would just fall the hell out of it. So we all know where that's going to go. But I'll practice. I don't know. So
your crows will come rescue you from your fall.
Well, yeah, they probably would. So anyway, let's learn some more about Fribourg and Neuchâtel. So the early adopters of all of this. So Fribourg was one of the first places in Europe to move witch trials from church hands into the hands of the state and made it secular. The first recorded records point to 1429 as the year Fribourg began executing witches, making it the third city in Europe to do so systematically. While many early names were lost to time, one of the earliest fully documented trials is that of Christian Born, which we discussed in Valais in 1517. He was a milkman, and he was accused of sorcery and sentenced to the stake. I believe he was one of the first men recorded. And then the very last executed was Catherine Rayponde, known as Carillon, in 1731. Her case is famous and very heartbreaking. She was a 68-year-old beggar accused of being a shapeshifter after a bailiff claimed he shot a fox that then spoke to him in a human voice. When Carillon was found with a similar injury, she was tortured and executed. She is technically the last person in Switzerland to be burned, though she was strangled first as a mercy.
Well, thank God for the mercy of it all.
Yeah, she was strangled, thankfully. I mean, but you also got to remember how they executed. Like, they tied a bag of gunpowder around their necks before they tipped them back into the fire, because hopefully that would go off and make it quicker. She was strangled and then had gunpowder put around her neck and then tipped down into the fire. So, like, she got all the shit.
That's
disgusting.
Hey, here's a quandary. Are executioners serial killers?
Yeah.
I mean, alrighty. Sorry. That's my brain.
Right. Technically speaking, they would be.
That's very Dexter.
It is very Dexter. I agree. So, Neuchâtel, they kind of considered theirs like a Protestant purge, so to speak. Their trials peaked a little later, often driven by the religious intensity of the Reformation, of course. That was like the biggest thing. We're not going to get into that. The first recorded from the systematic trials in Neuchâtel began around 1440, following the Valais witch hunts that had spread across the Alps. Early victims were often accused of being part of a sect of devil worshippers, a new and terrifying idea at the time.
Was that the beginnings of the satanic panic?
Yeah. She, of course, like I said, that was the first real transition into the sect of devil worshipping, rather than just, playing with herbs and things. And then the last executed. The trials in Neuchâtel faded out in the late 1670s. While there isn't one, quote, famous final name, like Carrion. The records show a sharp decline after 1667 as the local government began to view the, quote, proof required for witchcraft, like devil's marks, because that's where we're starting to really get into that crap. And they started doing that with a little more skepticism. So not just she has a mole, so obviously she's a witch. They actually had to have some kind of something to go with that. So that was a shorter one, as there wasn't a ton on it because the records are basically just, there's nothing. I believe the next one starts picking up a little more on the records, and that one will be after our next episode. In my little bonus down here, after Amy is done with hers, I'm going to tie in a little something. It's actually longer than what I had for Fribourg and Neuchâtel. So,
okay.
All right. So I'm going to let you hop to it.
Okay.
I'm
going to tell you about a ghost. Sort
of.
I am going to tell you about the ghost of Moira Rua, or Red Mary, who is said to haunt the ruins of Leamanah Castle, which are located in Kilnaboy in County Clare, Ireland. And please forgive my Irish. My Irish ancestry does not include a lilt or being able to say these words. Local legends claim that Red Mary married 25 men and killed each of them, one after another. One way she killed a husband who displeased her was seemingly by accident. During a heated argument, Mary kicked the man so hard in the stomach that it caused internal injuries, which led to his death. She remarried quickly. Other ways she murdered her husbands include, but are probably not limited to, pushing from an upper window of Leamanah Castle, poisoning, which is a classic way to kill a spouse, chaining and breaking them into a tower room, hanged from a beam, and stabbing. She would remarry shortly after each death. After murdering her 25th husband, Mary was captured by Cromwellian forces, sealed inside a hollow tree, and left to die. If you're wondering if she came to be called Red Mary due to bloodshed from killing all 25 of her husbands, she did not. The nickname actually came from her striking red hair. I'll explain all that later. Mary is said to have been a ruthless and fiery-tempered woman because, red hair, ruling her house with an iron fist. It wasn't just husbands who felt the brunt of her anger. She was also known to harshly punish servants who displeased her as well. We'll get into her truths later. I do, however, want you to keep in mind, because Bambi has been schooling us all about it, that the witch trials in Ireland took place sporadically between the 14th and 18th century, and Mary's story takes place in the 17th century. I want to give a good description of this castle as it stands now. So it isn't a castle in the usual sense, so it's not grand and sprawling with turrets and such. It's a 5-story stone tower house adjoined by a 4-story mansion. The original tower house was constructed around 1480, and the mansion was added in around 1648. So it's a big old rectangle made of thick weathered limestone. There's nothing really fancy about it at all. It's very, very square, very rectangle, just very plain. It stands now as a ruin. So the roof and upper floors are gone, and it has definitely seen some things. It's wondrous to look at, but it's just a hollow shell now. Originally, there was a courtyard, which is called a walled bawn. That's a fortified courtyard, a defensive stone enclosure. This was the standard for tower houses in that era, and it would have held in their livestock and had storage areas. And so you'll have seen these in movies and TV series that feature castles, Braveheart, Game of Thrones, etc. You'll know what I'm talking about. It's just that stone wall around the castle grounds. It does set on privately owned farmland. So if you're in Ireland seeking this place out, please keep that in mind. The public is not permitted to enter the surrounding field or the structure itself. It can be viewed from the road. Someone did take some good drone footage, which I found when I was checking it out on Google Maps. You can just type in Leamanah Castle, and it is an Irish word. So let me spell that for you. It is Leamenah. It is pronounced Leamanah. So you just type in Leamanah Castle Ruins, Ireland, and you can see from the video how close it is to the road. Please always be respectful of private property. It is gated. Don't enter that. So let's get into the haunting of it all. Nearly every story you read about this particular castle involves the apparition of a red-haired woman seen in the upper windows of the manor house. Wild, given that the floors no longer exist. A woman with long, flame-colored hair is seen standing motionless in a window. This most often occurs at dusk or during overcast weather. She is described as solid, not misty. She vanishes when you look away and look back or try to take a photo. The next thing is something I found super interesting. Horses stop dead on the road near the castle. Now, some have even panicked and reared back when they're forced to move closer. Riders that have experienced this say it seemed like something invisible was blocking their way. I read an article called Leamanah Castle and the Ghost of Red Mary on Maunsmausileum.com. It was a really good article. I found mention of a stallion that belonged to Mary. And I just want to mention this because it seems like one of the local explanations of why horses are spooked there is because Mary's ghost doesn't like horses or horses don't like her. But the article says she also had a stallion in her stable, according to legends, that she challenged visitors to ride on. Once released, the stallion would run toward the cliffs of Moher, where the poor victims would be thrown off and into their death. And what's a ghost story without disembodied voices, which is our favorite? Visitors report female screams, crying, and angry shouting coming from the ruins, and this happens especially at night during storms. No one is ever visible, and the sound seems to be coming from inside the empty structure. The voice is described as furious, grieving, or commanding. Not all at once. It just depends on what you're hearing. Some have claimed to hear more than one voice. Some think what they're hearing is servants being berated. A thing about that, the ruins are limestone. Now, limestone is associated with residual hauntings, along with quartz and magnetite and some others. If you want to learn more about that, look into stone tape theory. If you're a fan of ghost hunters, they've talked about that before. I think it was on the episode that they explained it, was when they did the Stanley Hotel in Colorado.
Yeah, I believe so.
So that was in 2006. That hotel, if you don't know, is the one that inspired Stephen King's The Shining. And I nerded out. I forgot I did this and I looked it up. It's actually season 2, episode 20. You're welcome. There are some who associate the screams with Red Mary's death. Now remember, she was said to have been sealed inside a tree and left to die screaming. Some more window phenomenon. Even when the flame-haired apparition is not seen in all of her glory, tourists have reported seeing movement in the upper windows. Shadows crossing behind the empty frames. There is no longer any glass in any of the windows. A face sometimes appears just for a split second. Now that one makes me wonder about shadows cast by the sun or the moon or the moving clouds. A hand has been seen resting on the stone windowsill. Disembodied hand, not okay. That's probably worse than a disembodied voice. Yeah. Unless it's Thing from the Addams Family, and I'm okay. I'm okay with that one. People have described the movements that they're seeing in those upper floors as someone pacing. And like I said, it's the upper floor, and the floor no longer exists. A red glow is reportedly seen at night. It's described as reddish, flickering light like firelight. This appears in the lower windows and vanishes when you approach, which you shouldn't be doing. There's no sign of people, no candles, no torches. So again, it's private property. What are you doing there that close at night? But I'm wondering if it's people working the farm who report on that, not trespassers.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
Local lore says the red glow is Mary's temper flaring up, or it's just the fires raging bright while she burns her victims. It is said that ravens circle and scream around the castle, and well, good for them, because that's their job. A thing about ravens and crows, they remember faces. They also gossip. So if you aren't a familiar face, they probably are going to let you know that you don't belong there, and they'll pass down a grudge to their family. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, crows talk shit.
They do. Tourists report sudden temperature drops, cold pockets near the castle walls, a sense of pressure or heaviness, and a feeling of being watched. I mean, the crows might be watching you, so that's a possibility too. The castle is situated at the junction of R476 and R480, and a lot of the encounters do happen from the road. People driving by have reported seeing a woman in the window. Something super creepy and no thank you is that sometimes people are driving by and feel compelled to stop the car. A lot of times people will stop of their own accord to take pictures and their cameras or phones will malfunction, but only when they're aimed at the ruins. So if you're taking pictures of the fields in front of or any of that, they're fine. A sense of someone standing behind you while you take pictures of it is also reported. Absolutely not. No, thank you. Trespassers, because visitors isn't a strong enough word, have claimed they've gotten too close to the castle and heard footsteps behind them. What are you doing there? A hand on their shoulder, and some have had the sense that someone is walking toward them from inside the castle, so they're coming at them. There's no one, no human. No one is there. Folklore says this aligns with Red Mary's dominant and confrontational presence. So some think it's Mary coming at you and not like castle guards. There's something about Mary. But who is she really? Red Mary was born Moira Rouen McMahon, sometimes spelled Mcmahon or Mahon. She came from the powerful McMahon family in Thomond in County Clare. Her father was Sir Turlough Rouen McMahon, Lord of Clonderlaw, and her mother was Mary O'Brien, daughter of Connor O'Brien, the third Earl of Thomond. Now, please remember, as I'm talking more about this, that names tended to be passed down. It might get a little bit confusing here in a bit. There's not an exact date for her date of birth, but she was born around 1615 or 1616, somewhere in Ireland, likely County Clare. Her parentage, of course, made her a 17th century Irish aristocrat. We already discussed that the nickname Red Mary came from her red hair and not because of all the bloodshed. And as you can tell from her father's name, he was also red-haired, the Rouen. So instead of something like Turlough the Brave or Mary the Bold, they were Turlough the Red-Haired and Mary the Red-Haired. Rouen wasn't a middle name, it was just a descriptive epithet. Mary did marry. There's no other way of fixing that, y'all. Sorry. Mary did marry multiple times, but it was not 25. It was actually just 3. Yeah.
What? Okay. Continue, please, because what the hell?
Well, listen, so I had to come to her defense, and you'll see why. So I was like, I've got to tell her truth. Each of these marriages aligned with political and economic strategy during a turbulent era. In the 1640s to 1650s, Ireland was experiencing the Irish Confederate Wars and the brutal Cromwellian conquest. Just to reference, through the 14th and the 18th century is when Ireland was having their witch trials too. So I don't know if she thought that would be her fate or anything. There's like no real reference like linking those two things or anything, but I just got to thinking about, and I'm like, she is now, well, you'll see in a bit, she's a wealthy aristocrat, and at some point she becomes the sole heir of things.
With a lot of the quote, which is if they weren't convicted or executed, they would do all of this mouth running and rumors to run them off. So
right.
This is kind of all making sense.
Yes.
Now.
So she does, well, let me just keep telling her truths here. Marriage number 1 was to Daniel Naylon, spelled Neylon or Neylan of Dysart. I had one source say he was a doctor, and I had another source that referred to him as colonel. I mean, it is possible he could have been both. The couple married around 1634 or 1635 when Mary was 18 or 19, and they had 3 children. Now, there is some historical inaccuracies surrounding the number of children the couple had. There was mention that there were sons who were stillborn or died shortly after being born. I found, I mean, that's par for the course. I found several sources that said that they had 7 sons in total, but the dates of birth for 2 are after Daniel's death. So Daniel died in 1639. I wasn't able to find his exact cause of death. All I could find was quote, died in 1639 while still a young man, end quote. Folklore surrounding Red Mary suggests that he may have died in the Spanish Wars or in a sudden accident. And of course, another source just said he died of natural causes. So a little more on that guy and why Mary is slick for what she does. He was a landowner. The couple lived at Dysart O'Day Castle in County Clare. Forgive me if I said all those things wrong. If you're weird like me and wondering, it's about 8 miles from Leamanah Castle. I don't know the terrain, but when I looked at it, it looked like you could probably see one castle to the other if you were high enough up. It was pretty close. But yeah, look that up because that's a gorgeous castle. Anyway, when Nalon died in 1639, Mary took control of his large estate and managed it until her oldest son, William, came of age. And now, I know record keeping wasn't accurate those many years ago, but I found William's date of birth listed as 1643, so that math ain't mathin' either. Now, this might be where some of the Black Widow legends surrounding her came about. Marriage number 2 was within 7 months of Nalon's death. Mary married her second husband, Connor O'Brien. You've heard that name before, but hold please. Of Leamanah Castle. Strike 1, she's a woman. Strike 2, she now owns land until her son can take over the estate. And strike 3, when her husband died, she remarried very shortly after. So I think she could have easily been dragged into things that...
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So the couple married in 1639 when Mary was 22 or 23. It was during this marriage when the castle was expanded and the mansion was added. So originally it was just that tower house. Around 1642 or 43, the couple had a son, Donogh O'Brien. Connor was a royalist and died in 1651 during the Cromwellian conquest. He was shot in Inchicronan, I hope I said that right, County Clare. He was taken to Ennis for treatment but died of his wounds shortly after. Now, this is the husband who the kick in the stomach is usually attached to. Now, if you'll remember, here's where the confusing stuff comes along. Mary's mother had been an O'Brien. From what I gather, Connor was a cousin. It's very confusing with the hand-me-down names. Mary's mother was Mary O'Brien, whose father was Connor O'Brien, third Earl of Thomond, and Connor O'Brien that Mary McMahon Nalon married is not her grandfather. So anyway, with the loss of her second husband, Mary also lost her military protector, her political partner, and her legal shield, and her connection to the royalist cause. This was not a safe position for her in the middle of the Cromwellian conquest of Ireland. It left her open for being stripped of her land, imprisoned, and killed. Do you see where I threw in witch trials? Because she also could have been accused of witchcraft or anything else. Because of all these things, she owns land. She's
checked off a lot of the boxes there.
So here comes strike 4 against her, though. Marriage number 3 in 1651. Almost immediately after her second husband's death, Mary, then about 36 or 37, married John Cooper. John was an English parliamentarian officer. This was a purely strategic marriage as he was aligned with Cromwell. Other than being an officer, I found no evidence that he was anyone of importance. As far as nobility, he had no children, but the marriage secured her son's inheritance. The couple lived at Leamanah Castle during the early part of their marriage, and Drumland was increasingly used later. John Cooper died in the 1680s of natural causes. Moira Rouen died not by being sealed inside a tree, but in 1686, at the age of 70 or 71, of natural causes. She is buried either at Ennis Abbey or Coed Church. I'm sorry, I just really needed to take up for this poor woman.
That is a stretch, like a big stretch. That's crazy.
It really is. And I mean, I have no doubt that maybe she probably ruled her house with an iron fist. Good for her. She probably had to.
Absolutely. But like...
And the castle ruins probably are haunted.
I would hope so. I mean, they're castle ruins.
Probably residual.
Hello.
Yeah, if I walk into a castle that's not haunted,
I'm
I'm
going to be
leaving.
so mad.
I'm not living there.
No,
Whatever.
no. I don't want it. Thank you.
Just some random nerdy stuff. In the 17th century, life expectancy at birth for all classes was 30 to 34. So for a noblewoman who reached adulthood, it was 50 to 60. And Red Mary made it to the ripe old age of 70 or 71. So good for her.
I mean, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I don't know what my deal is with history, mystery stuff here lately. But
that's because, we're weird. That's what we do.
we are. I just really needed to take up for that woman.
Yeah. I don't know. I like the little history things. If it's stuff that people don't talk about, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have history that everybody talks about constantly, and then we have history that we seem to do.
25 husbands she killed.
That's a lot of husband.
Out of the 3 she actually had.
25 out of 3 husbands.
So
we were talking about, or you had brought up Joan of Arc while I was talking about the Valais trials. So I decided I was going to do some digging. And it turns out that there is a slight connection, not a direct connection, but she is somewhat the inspiration for a little something else we've talked about before.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell you all about it.
I'm excited.
Okay, so it turns out that you were not incorrect in saying that her time frame was directly it was right then. In 1428, the Valais Valley, Switzerland, high in the shadows of the Alps, something is breaking. It isn't the ice, it's the law. I had to add some cheese in there because
I like it.
I do too. So, for the first time in history, the neighbors aren't just accusing each other of theft, they're accusing each other of a secret society. In Valais, they are inventing a new kind of monster. They say these people fly on sticks. They say they eat children. They say they have met the devil in the shape of a black cat. This is the Valais witch trial, the first, quote, great hunt. But while the peasants of the Alps are dying in secret, 100 miles away, a girl named Joan is stepping onto the world stage. She claims she hears voices. She says God sent her to save France. To her followers, she is a saint. But to the men watching the Valais trials from their ivory towers, she looks like something else entirely.
Yeah, she does.
She does. A courtroom in Rouen in 1431. Joan is in a cage. Her judge, Bishop Pierre Cachon, isn't just a priest. He's a politician. He has been reading reports from the Alpine trials. He knows the, quote, new signs of a witch, which, of course, like I said, went from making some ointments and things to hanging out with the devil on the weekends. So here is kind of a
role play?
Yeah, here's kind of a role play situation. So, Joan, tell us of the fairy tree. Tell us of the mandrake. Did you not dance there to summon the spirits? And of course she said, it was a tree for children. We sang. We brought garlands. My voices came from God, not the woods. You would think that would be good enough, but of course, no. So this is the bridge. This is kind of where they sort of connect. In Valais, they were burning people for dancing with demons in the forest. Cachon tries to map that Alpine paranoia into Joan. If he can prove the, quote, fairies tree was her, quote, Sabbath, he wins. So the focus shifted to the theological trap, of course. The trap closes not on her, quote, magic, but on her clothes. By wearing men's armor, Joan is violating the natural order. The same charge used against the, quote, witches in Valais who supposedly overturned nature.
She's Milan, and I just realized that.
She is, basically. Yeah, I had never really thought about that either.
You're welcome.
Interesting. Yeah. So on May 30th, 1431, Joan is burned. The world thinks the story is over, But for the history of witchcraft, it is only the prologue. After Joan dies, her most loyal general, Gilles du Hay, goes home. He was a hero. He stood beside her at the coronation, but now he is obsessed. If Joan could talk to spirits, why can't he? So Gilles turns to, quote, black magic. He hires Italians to summon demons. He begins a spree of horrific crimes that makes the Valais accusations look tame. When he is finally caught in 1440, his trial confirms the public's worst fears. The witches aren't just in the mountains. They are in the army. They are in the nobility. So this is spreading. Watching all of this is a man named Johannes Schneider. He writes a book called The Formicarius. In it, he links the Valais trials, the sorcery of Joan of Arc, and the depravity of Gilles into one terrifying narrative. He creates the, quote, anthill theory that witches are a growing colony hidden beneath the surface of the world. Now, remember, the Formicarius is essentially what we had previous to the Malleus, but we're going to... we're going to tap into that also. He basically just rewrote it, but with his own little plot twists. 50 years after Joan's ashes were thrown into the Seine, a failed inquisitor named Henrik Kramer is angry, of course. He's been kicked out of towns for being too obsessed with women's lustful nature, and he needs a manifesto. Does he, though?
Does he?
He really didn't at all. He needed to shut the fuck up and move on. But Henrik decided that he was going to write this manifesto of his, and he calls it the Malleus Maleficarum. And if anybody's been with us for a while and listened to all of our episodes, you'll know that we did cover this at length. That was actually my first series, was on the Malleus. And that translates to the Hammer of Witches. It's a bunch of BS. That's as mild as I can put that. So, I mean, he didn't invent any new ideas or anything. He simply harvested the seeds planted during the Valais trials and Joan's trial. So he uses Joan's relapse to prove that witches are liars. He uses the Valais pacts to prove that witches are a conspiracy. He uses the fairies tree to create the standard for the witches' Sabbath. So in essence, he just, as I said, he just copied down basically what Nider had put in the Formicarius and added this shit to it. So because the printing press had just been invented, basically Kramer's book spread like a freaking virus, which is just gross. Nobody likes a virus. The localized hysteria of the Valais and the political trial of Joan are now basically a how-to guide for every judge in Europe. That made it way better, of course. Joan of Arc was eventually made a saint, and the Valais victims were just basically forgotten, because there's really no records for them. But the connection between them created a shadow that lasted for 3 centuries. They were the first wave of the witch trials and the hysteria because a peasant girl claimed to hear God and a mountain valley claimed to see the devil. Over 50,000 people would eventually follow them into the fire. History is a mirror, and if you look long enough into the dark, you'll eventually see exactly what you're afraid of. In today's world, we see that same exact reflection, but with different accusations and executions. So there we are. That's our connection to Valais and Joan, because we knew there was one.
Yes,
we knew there had to be.
I'm so glad you looked into that.
Me too, because like when you said it, it really just like something in the back of my head was like, you need to look into that because you may find something here, because it was around the same time. And it wasn't far away. So I was like, I was looking at my timeline for my dates, and I was like, that's right in the middle of our next time frame. So, yeah.
I used to have like a minor obsession with Joan of Arc.
I mean, she was badass.
She was badass. And like, there was a movie, and I would watch it every day. Well, every night to fall asleep to.
Oh,
that's what I would watch. I can't remember what it was. I don't have it anymore. I'll have to figure out which one it was.
Yeah.
But like, it was like a double-sided DVD kind of movie.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was long, but it was good.
Yeah.
Now I want to watch that again.
I know. Now I want to know what it is. So you need to figure it out and let me know.
I will.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm going to bring it down. I have a missing person to cover. This is a recent one, and I just checked to make sure. I can't find anything stating that he has been located. This is Garrett James Lamb. He was 22 at the time of his disappearance, which was on January 5th, 2026, from his home in Marietta, Ohio. For a physical description, he is 5'10", approximately 130 pounds, brown hair, hazel eyes, with a slim build. Garrett was last seen late on the night of January 4th, 2026, shortly after midnight. Before leaving, he cut his hair and beard, a detail considered unusual by both family and investigators, and I have to agree with that one. That is unusual. So this may be a case of missing on purpose, but again, missing on purpose is still missing. According to official listings, Garrett was believed to be wearing a long brownish gray overcoat, blue jeans, a blue and gray knit beanie. Authorities have stated concern that Garrett may be unable to properly care for himself, placing him in an at-risk category. He is known to be either very talkative or nonverbal, depending on stress. He has a strong interest in water and hiking, which may influence search areas. But if you have any information regarding this case, you can contact the Marietta Police Department, 740-373-4141. And if you see his missing flyers on our socials, please take a minute just to share those for us, please.
I found a picture of where they did the actual missing poster, and then they took away his hair and facial hair. And made it into like a transitional picture. So I have two for him. I have his regular poster, and then I have the one with facial hair and one without.
Okay. So what I'm gathering is that he cut his hair and beard, and they discovered that when they discovered he had left.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Okay. If I have that wrong, please just kindly let me know. But that was kind of what
if anybody knows differently, or well, either way, really, that's kind of what I gathered from it anyway.
Yeah, because the family and the investigators considered it unusual.
Yeah. I guess that's going to wrap us up for this episode. Next episode, we will be taking a break from the witch trials. Then we're going to head back into the trials when we come back, and we are going to go into Western Switzerland and France. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe wherever you catch us, and don't be afraid to hit us up with any suggestions or ideas. You can fire us up on Facebook or email us at Macabre.Musings.Podcast@gmail.com.
Join us next time as we dive into more dark, creepy lore and maybe tumble down a rabbit hole or two. Until our next chapter, dim the lamp, mind the cold stones, and let your curiosity wander where the castle walls remember.
And we will see y'all later.